President Biden will go to the war zone tomorrow to show support for Israel. The president has already sent 2 aircraft carriers and has U.S. troops ready to deploy to the region.
The trip comes just as Iran is threatening to widen the war if Israel invades Gaza. It's all part of the high-stakes brinkmanship between Israel, the United States, and Iran. Chris Mitchell reports.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken explained one of the main reasons for the president's visit.
President Biden will underscore our crystal clear message to any actor, state or non-state, trying to take advantage of this crisis to attack Israel. Don't. To that end, he's deployed 2 aircraft carrier groups and other military assets to the region.
According to the Pentagon, about 2,000 U.S. troops may be deployed to the region to support Israel in intelligence and medical roles, should Israel launch a ground incursion into Gaza. Iran's foreign minister warned of a preemptive attack if Israel begins a ground invasion of Gaza and said time is running out.
If the limited and extremely tight windows of opportunity available to the United Nations and political actors are not used over the coming hours, opening new fronts against the Zionist regime is inevitable.
The IDF tells CBN News Iranian-backed Hezbollah is slowly escalating the situation on the northern border.
So there's the threat of that being, of the border heating up even further. Speaking to a friend of mine who was unable to come to work today because she was up until 6 o'clock in the morning. She lives in the north next to an artillery battery, and she was up until 6 o'clock with regular artillery fire into Lebanon. Things are hot and getting hotter.
Security expert Ari Sasha says Hezbollah presents a much more formidable military challenge than Hamas.
Hamas is the equivalent of AAA ball, the Toledo Mud Hens, and they're a good team. But Hezbollah is the Boston Red Sox. They're major league. They're near peer, I would call them.
This as new atrocities are emerging from the Hamas attacks on Israeli civilians. Israel's foreign ministry released this footage of an autopsy of people burned to death by Hamas.
I'm 31 years a forensic pathologist. I'm used to see dead people, but I never saw people that are conjoined together while they are burned, trying to hug each other. I'm sorry.
Hamas released this footage of a 21-year-old Israeli hostage kidnapped from Sderot. The IDF now says the total number of hostages is 199. On the Gaza border, Special Ops Sergeant Major Doron Kadar, fresh from the front lines, told CBN News this has unified all Israelis.
What I can tell you is what this has done, it has united all of us across the board, whatever our political agendas were before this broke out. We are all coming together. The Air Force, the ground forces, the Navy, everybody is coming, and we're ready to do our part to defend our country and to stand shoulder to shoulder.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, joining us now for more is Danny Ayalon, the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. And Ambassador, thanks so much for joining with us.
My pleasure, Gordon. Always good to be with you.
Let's talk about President Biden's visit. What message is Israel looking for?
Well, I would say threefold. First of all, it's nice to have the solidarity of the United States, our best friend and ally. And I know, Gordon, you and your viewers have done so much for this great alliance, on the basis of our Judeo-Christian beliefs. So it's solidarity. Secondly, is deterrence, as we've heard Secretary Blinken, especially deterrence against Iran and Hezbollah. And the third thing, which is not less important, is to build the region architecture after the war, because we cannot keep what we have seen. I mean, this is not another war. It's not just a war between countries or armies. It's a war between ideas. And we have on the one side of the divide the diabolical, satanic thinking and doing of the global jihad. The jihadists, which are trying to destroy our way of lives and our faith, are concentrated in Tehran, but they have tentacles and proxies all over. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, they have the Houthis in Yemen, they have militias, the Iranian militias in Iraq and Syria, they are in Sudan, they are in Libya, all over. So this will have to be a new order, and I believe that the president, when he's here, he's not just coming to Israel, but he will also meet moderate Sunni leaders like the King of Jordan and the President of Egypt, who have a major stake of defeating Hamas and the global jihad, because they're after them in order to make one caliphate all over the Middle East and beyond.
Well, let's take a much longer view, and I'll speak as an American, where 9/11 occurred, and then we invaded Afghanistan to wipe out the Taliban, and here we are over 20 years later, and guess who's back in power? The Taliban. Are you concerned that Israel can win the war but still continue to lose the peace?
Well, it is a concern, and we have had too many bad examples in history, including recent history. But this time we're determined to have a different outcome, not just on the military front and fields, but also in the political arrangement afterwards. And for that, we will need a political support from not just from the United States, but also from all our allies, NATO allies in Europe, all the Western countries, which should understand that the line in the sand is drawn now in Gaza. But what will happen, the fate of the war with the Hamas, ISIS in Gaza, will determine how all of us will live throughout the world.
I agree. I think we're into an enormous battle of ideology, and on one side you have an ideology that seems to be absolutely dedicated to death. There was a Hamas senior official quoted on October 8th. You know, it's just incredible, the timing. But he says that Israel loves life, and we honor our martyrs. That's what they want to be martyred for the sake of Allah. And you look at that quote, and how do you come against that kind of ideology? I mean, this is a time for the world to stand and say, no, we want to defend life. How do we do that on the world stage?
Gordon, this may be the most important point, and thank you for raising that, because the short answer is unconditional surrender. And we cannot, there's no coexistence with those who wish death upon you, and they do not care for dying themselves. And by the way, they are very cowardly, because, you know, who did they fight in the first 24 hours when they were advancing and the IDF was still regrouping and was not there? Who were they fighting? They were fighting babies and old ladies and entire families who were unarmed. And it was devastating results, just like the Nazis back in 1945. So I believe that we should have the same sort of an end game as we had with the Nazis and as we had with the Imperial Japan back in 1945. That means unconditional surrender. And after that, you can rebuild the area, hopefully to the better of the population itself.
Okay, well, it looks like it might turn into a much wider war. Iran is now threatening preemptive action. Do you view that as a threat, or are they actually going to go forward with it?
Well, it is a threat. I think they are waiting in the wing, although I can tell you from observing the Ayatollahs, which took hostage the entire Iranian people. The Iranian people are basically very good and a peace-seeking country, but they took over. And there is an aberration of history in the last 40 and so years of the Ayatollah's regime. But I observe that the Iranians are very careful about themselves. They are not confronting us directly, not so far. They will fight, Gordon, until the last Palestinian. They will fight until the last Lebanese or Syrian or Iraqi or Yemenite, the Houthis, but not themselves, although things may be different now. And I believe they were waiting to pounce on us. Were we to succumb to the surprise attack by Hamas in the south, I believe the plan was also to have Hezbollah joining in and maybe even Iran. But at this point, they have lost the element of surprise. Now we're concentrating all our operations in Gaza to take out Hamas. If Hezbollah joins, I believe that we have sufficient force to deflect that, and then when we're done with Gaza, take care of Hezbollah in the same way of unconditional surrender. And here we come again. Gordon, I want to thank you, and through you, the entire American people that on a bipartisan support come out to our aid. And the two strike groups, so the carriers of Gerald Ford and the Eisenhower carrier, which is coming now into the Mediterranean, the eastern basin of the Mediterranean off the coast of Beirut. They are enormous deterrents, and I believe that this may be hopefully sufficient for the Hezbollah not to act seriously, except all those skirmishes and all those provocations that they are committing as we speak now.
Well, one of the concerns I have on the carrier group is, are we getting mixed messages? I think the obvious is to deter Iran from entering in, and that if they launch anything against Israel, there'll be overwhelming destruction at the other side. But there are 2,000 troops that were ordered to prepare for deployment on the coast and to help with evacuation. Is there any concern on Israel's part on that particular order?
No, Gordon, and we have not asked, nor will we ever ask for Americans to fight for us. We do not need boots on the ground. What we see with the carrier groups is a real support, mostly in, as I mentioned, deterrence, but not only that. In real terms, they have a state-of-the-art electronic warfare equipments on board, which can really help deflect incoming missiles, if they do, from Hezbollah and Iran. And the nice thing here is that basically Israel military and American military have been conducting live munitions exercises in the last few years, exactly for such a scenario. So the American missile defense and electronic warfare is pretty much enmeshed with the Israeli ones. So it's giving us another layer of support. You know, we have the Arrow, we have David Sling, we have Iron Dome. Your carriers have what is called the Aegis, with everything that they have on board. So it's another layer of support, which can, I think, save, if the moment comes, will save a lot of lives. And again, I don't think that we will need to see much more than this action by the carrier groups, and certainly not a full-ground invasion.
Well, Ambassador, thanks for being with us. We stand with you. Hamas has shown us the face of evil. We will stand with you until it is absolutely eliminated. They have lost the right to exist. Hamas should be no more. And we stand with you. Thanks for being